Welcome back, everyone. Craig and Jonah, early morning. I want you viewers to know what we do. It's 5 a.m. here because we are fortunate enough to have a guest from Australia, Kevin, and it's 10 p.m. in where Kevin's at. So we had to kind of split the time zones a little bit to make this work. So, Kevin, before we get started, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us anything that you would like us to know about you, and then we'll start talking about your comments and kind of why you we started chatting.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So Kevin's my name. I'm a married man. I've been married now for 29 years. I've been Catholic, all my life. Born and raised Catholic. Yes. Same with my wife. We have three daughters. The eldest is turning 29, and she's got two little ones, hoping for third soon, but she's got two little ones. So we're grandparents, which we're just loving every minute of that. And two other daughters. One of them, the middle girl, now she's engaged to be married to a wonderful young man, another Catholic young man. So very, very pleased about that. So that's about it. I am running my own business. My wife works in Catholic social welfare sort of area. That's probably about it. Unless you've got any specific questions.
No, I think it's helpful just to understand that a little bit, to set the stage for some of the things that we wanted to talk about today. So you stumbled upon our channel. I think it was a YouTube short or something like that. Yeah, why don't you give us a glimpse into how you had the misfortune of finding our channel and kind of what spurred you to comment?
Well, I'm sure it was the Holy Spirit. But I just stumbled across your channel on YouTube. I think the title was something about, would this suit Protestants or something? I can't remember the title exactly, but
what our tricks
it was
work
intriguing.
On. Okay,
sorry.
All right. Yeah, I think it was.
Craig's good with the titles.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, I think it was. Will our tricks
scriptural?
Yes, yeah. Will our tricks work on Catholics? Or will our little methodology work on non-Catholics? I mean, so
yeah, that's right. So it was just a sort of I think it's just a bit of a random click. But I thought I do follow quite a number of Catholic channels. I really do like that, and really enjoy that sort of richness that's out there I mainly do on YouTube. So yeah, I just clicked on that, and I was intrigued by I suppose I got a glimpse of sort of what your sort of area of conversation is, and I was intrigued by it because I liked it. Seemed to be very authentic, and it seemed as though you guys were really trying to live your faith as best you can, but understanding, being merciful, I suppose, understanding that we're all struggling in this day and age in particular, I think. And there was an authenticity there that I really, really enjoyed, and so I commented on on that video, and just shared a little bit about my experience, my thoughts,
So,
yeah.
Some would say we're authentic to a fault. Before I respond to that, how would you describe yourself Catholic wise? Are you like a firm traditionalist? Are you sort of in the middle? How would you describe yourself in terms of, I don't know, like what kind of mass you go to, how just different levels of severity, I guess, of Catholicism?
Yeah. Okay. So I just go to the Novus Ordo, but I am quite conservative in outlook. I I think a bit like you guys. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really try to understand the church's teachings and accept them. I don't, but I recognise that they're hard. It's a hard road. So I wouldn't say that I'm a traditionalist in that, like I'm not a red trad, as they say. We don't have a luxury, where I am at least, we don't have a big luxury of, choices of, maybe getting to the Latin Mass or anything like that. I was born right at the cusp of the changeover. I think I might have been 2 or 3 when it changed over. So I don't even remember the Latin Mass. I'm not sure if I've even been to one certainly not one that I remember. So yeah, that's sort of where I come from. I mean, if I was to say my favorite pope over the last few, it would be Benedict, because I think Benedict, I thought he was a supremely intelligent man, but also humble, and he was crucified in the media for his so-called, like he was just seen as ultra conservative, but no, I think he was brilliant and really humble man. So he would be the sort of my hero pope in a sense. So that's sort of that's a sort of a bit about what
Makes sense.
where I'm coming from.
So remind me, what was the specific, I think you talked a little bit about sort of your past and your history and struggling with some of the sins of the flesh, so to speak, that we talk about here. What do you want us to know about kind of your history and journey, and kind of where you are now and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So a very, very long story. I won't bore
It's
you
okay.
with, or hopefully I'll go.
We have time.
Pull me.
Yep. You got time and coffee.
It's sort of. I think I really got to go back when I'm think about it, because as I said in my comment to your video, men who are Catholic men who are grappling with this area, and I mean relations with the wife and masturbation and pornography, where there's conflict in marriage and there's these sins of the flesh, then I think from my perspective I can trace back really my problems from my youth. I can trace it back. I can sort of see how it sort of evolved, these problems, so it would be a masturbation from probably, I would say, I might have been 14 or something, 13 or 14, I don't know, something like that. And and then, of course, jumping forward many years, when I met my wife, excuse me, we both, obviously both Catholic, trying to do what's right, but my wife was beautiful, and I was she wasn't my wife then, but I was chasing her, like I was really.
we can relate to that too.
Yes. I was chasing her, and she's a good girl. She was really, really strong, willed, and that was helpful in that sense, that she was a closed shop in that sense. But we did. I don't think we really lived, and there wasn't a lot of information around that time. This is early 90s. So we were married in 94. So in the early 90s, there was obviously not a lot of information around really, or people you could talk to that, honest, that in an open and honest way. And I was even involved in, Catholic youth groups, and had some, in a sense, what now we would call spiritual directors at the time as a young man. But this stuff just wasn't talked about. Like problems with masturbation or whatever, and lustful thoughts and all those things. Just wasn't talked about. We used to joke about it amongst ourselves as friends. But we really didn't talk about it. So I suppose it was something I carried with me right from those early days of my youth, through my later teens and into my 20s, and then into my relationship with my soon-to-be wife. And she was also in the situation where she was, just between the two of us, we didn't have sex before marriage, but there wasn't that far off it, put it that way. So I think if I could say that it wasn't lived very chastely. And so I was under the impression that she was I shouldn't be so crude, but I thought we were going to have a wonderful sex life, because she seemed to show all the signs of great interest before marriage.
They all do.
They all do.
Yeah, something happens.
They get you in, don't they? Get you in.
Pretty
everyone
consistent pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was extraordinary. When the ring went on the finger, it all changed. It was extraordinary.
So would you say it was from the wedding day or when you had your first child?
No, wedding day.
No kidding.
Right. Yeah. Right from the wedding night was a bit of a disaster. I was ready to go, but she was dead tired. Poor thing. She was, very emotional. There was other stuff going on in the background that I wasn't aware about at the time.
You're bringing back memories of mine. So
my wedding night was fine.
It wasn't terrible.
Kind of tired,
but it was, it was a learning experience.
Yeah. I've heard funny stories of people's wedding nights, but this one wasn't all I hoped for, put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. So and from there on, my wife and I don't, she might have. I'm sure she has a completely different perspective. This is how I see it, and I love her and respect her absolutely. She's just my world now. Just just to put that in perspective, it's no criticism of her. It's just the way that I see it when I look back, and probably more than half the problems were what I brought into the marriage. So don't get me wrong, right? But I think she was heavily influenced, by feminism, and very anxious to get her career up and going before having children. Getting enough for a deposit for a house and all this sort of stuff. So she was very not keen to have children straight away. But of course, I was on the hunt. So she got pregnant within probably 2 weeks of being married.
This is like a play-by-play reenactment of my marriage. So,
but I think the nerves about getting pregnant. Well, certainly she admits it. Played a big role for her. And I think so that could be a contributor in terms of when the wedding ring went on. Well, it was just a different ball game, and I didn't.
Can I interrupt you quick? So, feel free to say I'm not talking about this, but were you? How how Catholic were you? Were you learning NFP? Were you okay with birth control? What were you doing early on? Because I think it makes a big difference if you're how how real the threat of pregnancy is.
No, we didn't use. There were periods when we were under a massive stress where we did fall into using some contraception, but I would say mostly it's the, you mentioned the sin of Onan. Yeah, so it's that sort of thing. We tried NFP, and we both thought it makes a lot of sense. It's wonderful, but unfortunately for us and for a lot of people, I think the interest, especially for the wife, is more there during her fertile periods. And of course, I'm a bit starved in that area as the husband, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to exploit that. Unfortunately, it's
exploit that in terms of the solo stuff, or exploit that in terms of pursuing her and getting
pursuing
pregnant.
her. Pursuing her, and then and of course that creates a lot of resentment, and I can completely understand. It created a lot of resentment from her, and so, but I also think, and this is what I want to cover off too in what I'm saying is, I do think that there's a spiritual component to this, in that, and this is, it'll come out later and you'll see why I'm saying this. It's from my own personal experience, but I think the devil doesn't like Catholics. He doesn't like Catholic marriages. He tries to destroy them, and a big way he does that is in this area. And I think it sort of feels to me as though I was set up, way back, set up for this type of problem by the sins I was, the habitual sins of particularly masturbation, and then a bit later pornography. I think we're set, and then so it occurs to me that sure, there's these issues of where the wife doesn't want to get pregnant. She's very, very nervous about that because she's got these other plans, and the devil exploits that. So I think the devil messed with us big time. I've got no doubt about that. So I think that's a major factor in there. Not that the devil's under every rock, of course, but I really do think he exploits these circumstances. It's like, as you know, I remember I was listening to some of your other podcasts. I think it was also with Father Longnecker about porn. I think, doesn't matter, but about porn and masturbation. They're sort of presented as solutions to the sex-starved man. But from my own personal experience, it just heightened the frustration. Like it's a sort of a temporary Band-Aid, but in the end, it just makes it worse. For me personally, speaking personally, it just heightened the frustration, because in reality, I just wanted to love my wife. I just wanted to love my wife. That's all there is to it. I just wanted intimacy with my wife. She's my, she's the one I love most dearly, and that's what I wanted. So you end up looking for love in the wrong places, and then that just the frustration's heightened. So where am I? Sort of got sidetracked there a bit, but yeah.
I mean, I think that all resonates a lot with kind of what we talk about, and and I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but I think I'm not saying guys shouldn't beat themselves up over, but I think to understand realistically how this happens for married guys, at least, you know, we see our wives are busy and overwhelmed with children or really concerned about pregnancy, especially if there's some health risks with that. And it's always described as being selfish, and maybe it is, but at least for me in the past, it was like, I don't like, my wife is so overburdened. I This isn't on her radar really. It's a sort of a temporary relief that I don't have to be chasing her. Maybe that's just a rationalization, but I think it was a genuine. I think it's a genuine approach, that you're like, look, I don't want her to get pregnant. I've got these overwhelming desires that really interfere with my life. It buys you a little time, and for me, I think the where I don't know if you call this a spiritual dimension or not, but what the problem that I think it created in our marriage was that it enabled me to avoid talking to my wife about um, frustrations I had in our intimate life. Like, you could just go take care of business. You could avoid uncomfortable conversations. And I think that is where it can be harmful to a marriage, because it allows you to kind of carry around this baggage that really affects both of you without ever having to approach your wife about it, and she doesn't have an opportunity to know that you're unhappy or you're struggling. I think that, to me, that is where it can become kind of insidious, and really did probably decay our marriage for a long time until we started talking about it.
And I think it's just difficult to live with a beautiful woman and not desire her. Like, so just this Sunday, we were getting ready for mass, and I walked to the room, and Dolores was getting ready, and I just looked over and it's like, whew, man, I wish we had more time. But I mean, it just happens. I don't know. You can't help it.
Yeah, exactly right. Now I think, as you say, I think it's different for everybody. But from my own personal experience, taking care of business myself, it was really a disaster. I mean, personally, I think, and maybe I was hard on myself. Maybe that's true, though. I found great comfort or solace in reconciliation. And I would go to this. Sorry.
Frequently, usually.
Yeah, exactly. This was probably not a regular practice of mine until, let me think, might have been early 30s. But so there was a long time where, battling with this sort of thing, and the guilt, but not being practicing reconciliation very, very, very frequently. But then I sort of had this, I guess, as part of my journey, I could see that, as I mentioned before, you see these, you can trace the troubles in your life, but you can also trace the graces, right? So I could like what we were told, it's like the golden thread. You can trace the golden thread through your life of God's love for you, through your life. And one of those signature moments was when I guess rediscovered or discovered again, or came to the realization of how wonderful the sacrament of reconciliation is. So that was, I think that really kept me in check a lot. One of the gospel passages that blows me away all the time is where, if you remember, Jesus is reclining in a room full of Pharisees, and a woman comes in. We think it might even be Mary Magdalene. I'm not sure, but she's got long hair, and she's cleaning Jesus' feet with her tears and her hair. and she's crying, and the Pharisees are saying, what's that woman doing? Get her away. And Jesus says, leave her alone. Whoever's been forgiven much, loves much. Mm-hmm. And that really blows me away, because that's in a sense my own experience, that in that sacrament of reconciliation, going back and going back and going back all the time.
I get that too.
Yeah.
The fidelity, even though I felt as though I wasn't faithful in my marriage, the fidelity to that sacrament, I think saved me in the end. And I got I re-experienced every time the love of God for me in that sacrament, the mercy and love of God for me. So there's only one, I don't know how many times I've been to confession, obviously a lot, but there's only one experience that I remember where it was mildly uncomfortable, in the sense that the priest was telling me off. Otherwise, the priest was just very graceful, and just a beautiful experience each time. So,
what did he say that one time though?
Oh, he just said basically, "What are you doing? Get your life into order. What are you doing? You're going to wreck your marriage." Blah blah blah.
He probably had his own problems.
Yeah, I think he had a point, but and it was a good, humbling experience too. I didn't lash back or anything like that. But I think also that sacrament, practicing it regularly is wonderful, because it really does focus your attention. There's nowhere to hide. Particularly if you're going back regularly. If your practice is to go back regularly, even with the same sins, and I would, there's nowhere to hide. You can't hide from Jesus, So the practice of humility associated with that sacrament, I think, is save me, really. I really do believe that.
It's interesting, because and maybe I'm starting to understand it better, but the one thing that I really struggled about with this whole with this particular sin is, and I've heard that before, well, it keeps you humble, it keeps you going back in confession. This is God's way of reminding us of our need for him. The part that I've always struggled with is that, with the fact that we teach that it's a objectively grave matter and could separate you from God for eternity. Like, does God really do that? Does God, because this is, I don't know if this is similar to your experience, there's no other sin, or let's say something that rises to the level of serious sin, that more afflicts my life than this. Everything else is a distant second. This is, our many confessions I've had in the last 20 years that didn't include something like this. And does God really, is it as serious as the sort of church suggests it is, if it's so common and it's leading so many of us to confession? Or is it because it's a serious matter that we do go to confession, whereas if it was more of a minor thing, we might just blow it off and say, I guess I don't need to go to confession?
Well, it just feels like there's a biological component and a spiritual component. And, how much, what percentage is biological and what percentage is it spiritual? And I don't know, maybe you can provide insight to that, since, that's kind of the next part of your story, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think we tend to get probably too caught up in whether it's a mortal sin or it's a venial sin. We get just tie ourselves into knots. Mm-hmm. And one of my confessors, I did have a priest who was helping me. He was wonderful. He was a beautiful man. He was a religious. He was a Blessed Sacrament father, and I just went to confession with him once, and he said, I can help you in this area, and he was my spiritual director, let's say, for might have been for about a year or 18 months or something. And I don't know where I've gone with this, why I even mention it. I'm getting sidetracked again, but
did he lead you to your solution then, so to speak, for this, or?
That's right. He said it's about the mortal versus the venial sin type of thing. He encouraged me to stop thinking like that, and just to when something like that happens, then make your peace with God, and then formalize it in reconciliation. But not if you, and I think even Father Longnecker might have said this, if you are sincerely sorry at the moment, then your sins, you can be forgiven, but you do have to formalize it, let's say, in reconciliation. So, and that if that's your intention, not to get if your intention is to do that, then not to get too worked up about, I'm in mortal danger that I'm going to go to hell or something. So I think that was really good advice. But I also, I was always keen to get to confession because, it just gave me so much encouragement and grace, to stay in the battle. And that's what it is. It's a battle. Our lives are a battle. So as soon as we give up and give in, that's when the real trouble starts, I think. If we're in the battle, then we're the problem starts when you give up.
You mentioned that the solo stuff started when you were a teenager, and then sometime after that is when the porn became introduced. Like, how old were you when the porn started becoming a problem, so to speak? Maybe not kind of a one-off thing, but
I would say probably mid-20s.
And let's say at the height of the problem, and let's say when you're married or whatever, were they always associated with each other, or was sometimes the solo without the porn, or was it always a sort of a combination problem?
Typically, but not always. Sometimes they'd be separate. I would, and a word that comes to mind, I was thinking about this earlier today, was the word rebellion. I was a rebel, and I feel as though my rebellious nature, it was part of my nature from, early on as a kid, maybe. And when the wife wouldn't play, as we'd say, I would just, spit chips, and in a sense, in a way, in a stupid way, but want to punish her in a way by doing the porn. So there's this sort of rebellious sort of, why can't I have my way in a certain sense? That's part. It's not the entire story, but it's just part of it too. So I remember even as a young and frustration when I was younger, at least, I was a shy boy, and I didn't, I was shy, and I didn't have didn't seem to have much luck with the girls. And so, that frustration there as well, it's sort of like this sense of rebellion that I'm going to take it into my own hands.
Literally. Was your wife aware of the problem at all when you're married? I assume she knows now, or maybe not.
Yeah, she knows now. Yeah, certainly. So she had inklings here and there, but it wasn't something again that we could talk about in reality. Even these things. Yeah, I couldn't talk about it with her probably until. Yeah, I was just in. I wouldn't admit it anyway until much later, and so that's a big problem. But it's also a bit of a. I see, my wife was very strong-willed and knows what's right and is very principled. All wonderful qualities, but she probably. I felt, at least at the time, that she wouldn't be understanding because of the way her personality. So it's a harsh judgment on my account, but that's the way I saw it at the time.
I think that's a pretty natural and common fear that men have. And I think for the most part, most women don't share the struggle, can't really relate to why it happens or whatever, and so we kind of keep this secret to ourselves. And I think for a lot of us, we have this idea that we want to share with our wives, but we want to be former masturbators and not ongoing before we have that conversation, and that never seems to come for most of us, it seems like.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of your episodes you mentioned how you were reading this particular catechism from a Jesuit priest who said, masturbation is a problem before marriage.
Yeah.
I laughed at that too. I thought that, yeah. What planet is he on? He hasn't had many confessions, obviously.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you said that you think it was kind of an act of rebellion against your wife. I can kind of see that. I'd never thought about that before, but like if your wife puts you down or, isn't the kindest to you, I can see how that kind of feeling rises up. I don't know. I had never thought about it like that before.
Yeah. No, it's quite strong. And I'm stubborn, Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And I think I know for something I struggled with for a while, and this is similar to what you did, is when you're having, you talked about how it happens and it makes the problem worse. I think part of what goes on in the brain is Catholics, okay, we're not proud of this, we're going to confession, and in the back of your mind it's very easy to blame your wife. You're the reason I have this problem. If you would just put out, so to speak, I wouldn't. I think that's something that goes on in the back of your mind that really can foster resentment in the back of your mind, because none of us want to do it. And is that correlated all to what you were going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Total frustration, and what I felt at the time is a lack of understanding on her part. Frustration also, like with the NFP, the monthly cycles thing. All of that. Yeah, big time. I'll probably step on to my next major.
Yeah, go ahead.
Major traffic light. Well, no, that's the right analogy, but major traffic light event or something that milestone, let's say. And that was we'd be walking home from work, from the railway station, walking past our parish church. For weeks on end, this has probably went on for maybe even a few months, and the church where we used to go, this is where we used to live back in Melbourne. That church had an adoration chapel, and you key the numbers in, and you could get in it at all hours of the day, whatever. And I felt drawn to the chapel, like something pulling me. I sort of had this sense at the time that, I'd learned all my life through my formation, as a Catholic, with a youth group and all this, the importance of putting the gospel into practice, loving your neighbor, acts of charity, acts of love, acts of kindness, going out of yourself, and loving the other, and this sort of thing. I was sort of deeply schooled in that sort of way of thinking, but I recognized that, I felt as though I was sort of living this double life in a sense. I'm pretending to be a good Catholic, but then this bloody mess going on, underneath the surface. And that I recognized that I just didn't have the resources, like I'd say, that's the way I describe it, the spiritual resources deep within me to respond to God's call, God's calling to live out my faith, not just in relation to with my wife, but also just in general terms, to go out of myself to think of the other, to serve the other, that sort of thing. So I had this perception that I really needed to work on my interior life to build my spiritual capital, let's say, so that I could then, with the interior resource, I could then properly live out my faith, and maybe also fix my problems with marriage, with my relation. And might I say, with the marriage, we've always been absolutely best friends, always. Always through this, we have this one area in our lives which has seemed to be a bloody mess, but we just love each other's company. We never really got to the point where there was a couple, of course, everyone has it, every couple has it, but there are times where you really do feel like giving up, but that was only very brief. So that I thought I'd make that clear. But so then that happened for some time, and I remember explaining to my wife, I really feel drawn, to prayer. I don't have to describe to her what I was feeling, and she was also schooled in the same sort of philosophy, let's say, of religious practice, I suppose, as I mentioned, about trying to live the gospel in your daily life, with the neighbor who's next to you, who's the person who's next to you is your neighbor that you are to love, and she didn't understand it, and I had difficulty explaining it, but so then I would go to adoration, I'd spend a long time in adoration, at least, or might be 4 or 5 times a week, or whenever I could, and I started to build this practice of prayer and desire for prayer and longing for God, and I started to realize, I think, and I started to see the first fruits of that, I think, where within the troubles, what gives me strength to endure them, I suppose, is finding this almost a level of intimacy, I suppose, with God through prayer. The intimacy that you're looking for with the wife may not be forthcoming, when you want it. Beautiful when it does happen, but not frequent enough or whatever. And what helps help me get through that is building this interior life of prayer and spending time in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and really feeling my heart, a physical sensation of my heart, just feeling deep love for God.
Can I ask a quick question? I don't want to break your train of thought, but like, kind of how old were you? Like, how old were your kids when this was going on? Could you just kind of give us an idea of where you were at in your life?
So that would have been in my early 40s, I suppose. Yeah. So
kids are still at home, but not babies or anything like that.
Yeah, no, kids are still at home, but not babies. Yep, that's right.
All right, go ahead.
Yep. So that's the next sort of milestone. And so then it moved from, the first thing that really captured me, as I mentioned, was this experience of reconciliation. Then this new understanding, I suppose, or appreciation of the Eucharist and God's love for us through that sacrament. And then probably jump to the main event where it really changed for me. Really amazing experience. I had tried, mind you, lots of different things. I tried novenas.
What did you say?
Novenas.
Oh, yeah.
Novenas.
Been there, done that.
Who's the novena? The patron saint of hopeless cases. I think St. Jude or somebody.
Yeah,
I tried him.
this is even above his pay grade, I think.
Well, it's so funny. Dolores and I were talking about this last night. She's like, "You're getting up at what time? Talk to a guy from Australia." She's like, "What can this guy possibly have to say?" And I was like, "Well, he kind of prayed novena, to overcome sins of the flesh or whatever." And she's like, "So there's a masturbation novena." And I was like, "Well, not exactly."
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, I've tried everything at this point, and also for us, in a sense, God, calling out to God like Job, why have you abandoned me?
Yeah.
I'm going to reconciliation on a regular basis. I'm just a mess. I just have no control over myself. And this is, again, I've got to come back to the spiritual nature of the battle. I think when we give ourselves over, in a certain sense, to some of these habitual sins, and the devil gets involved, then he has a certain power over us. And the way I describe that is that I used to see as an example, I'd see a pretty girl on the street, and I'd just go into this bloody zombie mode until I get like watch porn or whatever, it's like this.
Scratch the itch.
Yep. But it was more than that. It was, and I recognize it now what it was. I was really under some demonic influence there, but and you'll see why I get to that in a minute. But so I tried everything, crying out to God, and I think God heard, unfortunately, we do have to keep knocking. We do have to keep storming heaven with our prayers and our tears. God expands the heart, by us continually asking, with all our heart and all our soul and being. I think he expands the heart, and this is what I think happened with me, that he was preparing me. So trying everything, tried the rosary, of course, and a lot of people have a great success with the rosary. I didn't have it initially, probably because I was hopeless at it, and like a lot of people, give up because I'm not able to do it well. Therefore, I won't do it at all. And that was a big mistake. But so anyway, coming now to, this is around when I'm 50. I'm getting on a bit now. This is 7, 8 years ago now. I'd finished my first, let's say, my main career. I was on a bit of a change in direction. My brother and I started a business together that went completely, wasn't a big success. And I didn't want to go back to my former career. I was in agricultural research. I didn't want to go back to that. Just tired of that. and I didn't want to go back. And a friend of a friend suggested to me, because he understood that situation of my working life and trying to work out what I'm going to do next. He said to me, pray this prayer, but because it works. He said, be careful what you pray for because it works. And he's like, he seemed to, I thought, oh, well, I might as well try it, And it was, I've tried everything else.
Money and good looks first, just to see.
I've tried everything else. I was always willing to give it a crack. So, yeah. And it's a 30-day devotion to Saint Joseph, and it's under the title Saint Joseph's, or the Holy Cloak of Saint Joseph. It's a booklet, came in a booklet form. You can get it on the internet. Anyone can find it on the internet as well. But I had it in booklet form. It would take about 15 minutes to go through it, probably 15 or 20 minutes to go through it on a daily basis for 30 days. Where I missed out on a day or two, I'd do it twice the next day, and that's apparently met the,
seemed to count.
It's good to know.
Yep, I was very, very careful to try and do it right. So he said, yeah, do this, but make sure you be careful what you pray for.
All right.
So I said, okay, thanks very much. Yeah, I'll do it. But of course he thought I was praying for my job. I didn't care about my job. My main thing was I wanted to fix this area of my life, and also my relationship with my wife. I just love my wife, but I just seem to have no control over myself. I can see how people, in a certain sense, in marriages, can really love their spouse, but wreck their marriages anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that's what I was afraid of. Mm-hmm. So I started praying this prayer for my, chastity in marriage, chastity outside of marriage, or whatever. And so I, during the 30-day period, I did stuff up a couple of times from memory. I don't remember quite the details, but towards the, within the last day or two, I felt this extraordinary protection of Saint Joseph. It was a tangible, like it was the cloak. If you can imagine a cloak that's wrapped around you, right? Of protection. Well, that's what it was like. It was honestly, the way I described it at the time was like a force field. I felt this force field go up around me. But prior to actually experiencing that sensation of this, and it's a tangible thing, I could feel it. Like it's just really weird. It's hard to describe, but I didn't see anything. But I felt this cloak over me, this force field over me. And but prior, a day or two when I was under intense, let's say, temptation to watch porn, I felt around my head. It's like we have lots of flies in Australia. You go outside in the summer and you're trailed by flies, and all these like these things buzzing at my head. Again, tangible. I didn't see anything, but a tangible feeling of like I was being attacked. I didn't, and then once the force field went up after the next couple of days, that was gone, totally gone. All my temptation to watch porn and masturbation was eliminated. Just pure graces. My relationship with my wife just completely, in the bedroom, it was completely upended, changed completely. My wife couldn't believe it, my change in behavior. All the angst that I felt when she couldn't, come to the party, it's completely eliminated. It was the most extraordinary experience, and I felt this this, let's say, this force field effect, probably for, it might have been 4 or 5 days, something like that. And then, but the effect of that remained, and I recognized it. Like, obviously it's just a grace from St. Joseph. It was just the most marvelous, amazing thing. So from there on, I mean, I stuffed up once or twice, but in a very, very minor way, but much later. I've been completely free.
Wow.
So absolutely amazing experience. So I didn't recognize, that I was mentioning the flies buzzing around me. I didn't recognize that until later, that I really do think that was the demonic element that was, I was under assault, because the temptation, as I mentioned before, I was at the point where we have these temptations where I go into zombie mode, and I couldn't. I was just completely obsessed, in a sense, that unless I watched the porn and masturbated, that feeling would just persist with me until I did it. Mm-hmm. It's like being driven. So I was obviously pretty deep in the addiction, let's say. So I didn't recognize that at the time as demonic input, but now when I'm looking back, several years later, I started to see that that's what it was. I came to understand, I suppose, that that's what it was, and I then start to recognize the spiritual nature of the battle, of my own battle, at least. So yeah, that's.
So in your opinion, you would say that the biological component is much less than the spiritual component for men fighting going solo?
No, this is just my experience, and also, I would say, it depends on how bad the problem is. You know how porn can be extremely addictive, as you know. There can be also some pretty nasty. I mean, I never watched. I'm just putting it out there. I never watched any really horrible, pedophilia or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Nothing like that. But there is some porn that's put out there is cursed. Mm-hmm. So I think we can inadvertently get under the influence of demonic attack, and so what the devil does, he will use any weakness, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual, in us to his own advantage, to try and get us off track. So, and then the deeper you get into the problem, the more hold he's got over you. So, yeah, that's just my perspective, and I think everyone's different. The biological is certainly a huge driver, obviously, initially, but I think once you get into addictive behavior, and if there's signs like that I experience where you go into the sort of zombie mode, then I think there's reason to be concerned that there's more at stake.
So, like, before you, I don't know when it was the worst, but you kind of when you felt like you were sort of most struggling with this, kind of how chronic of a problem was this? A daily event, weekly, multiple times a day? Can you give us any sense for?
Honestly, because I was going to reconciliation regularly, it's not as though it was even weekly. It might have been, let's say, every fortnight or every 3 weeks or something like that. So I think, again, that's another way that I was kept in check, mm-hmm. in a sense, by the reconciliation. But it's more the experience of getting into this sort of zombie sort of state where unless I sort of act it out through porn or whatever. It's just going to persist with me, like just this obsessive sort of feeling. I just can't get rid of it. Rid of it. The intensity of the temptation. Yeah.
So, like, when you say it kind of ended for you, like Jonah and I talk about, and this is more the biological, but we call it PMAS, postmarital act syndrome. For us, it's like you get 3 or 4 days, it's fine, and then day 5 and on, it the pressure builds up. I don't know how else to describe it. To the point where you start being unable to sleep at night. I've had that recently, and did sort of the healing that you attribute to the novena kind of take that away, or was it just your ability to fight through that or ignore those feelings change? How would you describe it?
Well, it took it all away. Initially, but I sort of knew that God was calling me to a greater relationship, union with him, let's say. And I knew that if I didn't fix up other areas of my life, that this bloody beast could come back.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew, I sort of had this gut feeling that there's a chance that this come back unless I, for example, I just, I love my glass of wine, or half a bottle. I just fill my face too much with food, so in those sort of areas of showing again lack of self-control, if I didn't address those things, also didn't focus on my interior life again, that this beast would come back. And there were signs that at a certain point, let's say 5 years ago, let me think, maybe 3 years ago, I was faced with that, but a much milder form of temptation again. And I realized then again, we'll talk about the spiritual nature of it. Well, my experience now is that if I'm keeping up my prayer life, and it's constantly evolving, and I'm not necessarily good at it. I'm not saying I'm good at it at all, but if I'm trying to do that, keeping up my prayer life, getting to mass as often as I can. I don't get every day, but probably four or 5 times a week. Still go to a monthly reconciliation and all that. If I'm doing that, then I can just cruise through, like, not only like with the activity in the bedroom. That's it's still not fantastic. But I can just cruise through because I'm at peace. It's like that. If I have that intimacy with God, then I can cope much better without not only in the bedroom, but I'm just thinking also with my work. I'm peaceful. I can let things go. I can trust in God's providence in my work, that He's looking after everything. I'm not worried about it. Like I can cope. If that starts to fall away, and also, so I'm also working on those other aspects. Like I've given up the grog, as we call it. I don't know what you call it in America, but the grog is the booze during the week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say those things go hand in hand, the solo and the booze. And
yeah. So I've given up that during the week, and I have some on the weekend. I'm fasting, doing the Marian fast of Wednesdays and Fridays, not eating until dinner time. I've also sort of much more devoted to Our Lady now. I've got the brown scapular and miraculous medal around me. So I've taken these extra.
We have them on
precautions. Sorry?
We have him on too. We were with the Scapulars as well.
Yeah, it's great.
That is good.
So I feel much more, it's like I could rabbit on for ages. We're going to past the hour, but
Okay.
it's like Saint Joseph. My relationship with him was, like I just loved Saint Joseph. I still, of course, still do, and I was so grateful to him. And then he brought me to Our Lady, to the Blessed Mother. A much stronger devotion to her, of course, then she takes you to Jesus. So it's like, so I guess I just feel a much greater need now to like have multiple layers of defense.
Did you pray the Saint Joseph novena, have you done that only once, or have you prayed it again since that time?
Yeah, I did it more than once because the experience was so wonderful, and I was so grateful to Saint Joseph that I did it several times afterwards at various points. It's been a while since I've done it since, but I certainly did it more than once.
For the same issue, or different ones for different intentions, or the same intentions?
Different intentions.
Okay.
So for the different intentions, did you feel like that force field kind of effect at the end, or the cloaking effect? No, that.
No.
Okay.
It's like this particular gift that's given in this mysterious way.
You mentioned afterwards that your relationship with your wife changed, and you don't have to give intimate details, but can you just describe more generally kind of like how it improved, or what part of your relationship improved at that time?
Well, I guess she was happy that I wasn't chasing her around the bedroom, and giving her because I guess with the history, and I think this is like for a lot of men, she's on edge as soon as I touch her. Like it's there's that sort of experience, and I was able to keep my hands off her when I knew that she was on edge or whatever. I would tell her that I'm fine. It's just to alleviate her anxiety and her suffering from my attentive behavior. And of course, then that flows on into everything. And then she then also is just blown away by the grace that I've received, and she took a great interest in Saint Joseph too. And I guess from there on, both our spiritual lives together have really strengthened as well. And
Very good. So I guess one thing, I guess maybe to wrap up a little bit, and I think everything you've said makes a lot of sense and would resonate with a lot of people. I certainly resonated with a lot of what you said. And I'm wondering, do you have any particular message you would give either to younger men when you're married, or maybe even teens? I don't know. I think I have a sense for what to tell my younger self when I would say I was 5 years married as opposed to 20. But what about what do we do with the teenagers? I don't know. I have 9 kids. I mean, I don't even know if I figured out how to talk about this stuff in a way that informs them but isn't overwhelming for them. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah. I don't know either, and I think every person and every child, teenager is different, and everyone has to, in a way, I think, make their own mistakes and all that. In terms of, let's say, just some general advice, again from just my experience. Just never give up. Never never give up, because I think as soon as we give up, the battle's lost, and that's, I mean, we can always recover. But my point is that, now just be determined. As part of my personality, I mean, I never ever gave up. There were periods where I did, I suppose for longer periods, or I did, get caught up in it, but I always came back, and always. So there's that, and just understanding the pure love and mercy that God has for each of us, and understanding that all is not lost. There's always hope, and there's always hope so long as we're in the battle, we're in the fight. There'll always be something we're fighting against. So that's the sort of, and frequent the sacraments. Just frequent the sacraments, and pray. But really pray. I think I was thinking before that what was a real blessing for us is that my wife is Catholic, and she's always tries to do the right thing, and is determined to always improve as well as so we had that in common. I think for men who maybe their wives are of a different faith, or a different view in life, or maybe as you mentioned, maybe there's illness there that prevents intimacy, or all these sorts of things that go on. So where are you going to find the strength? And I think the only way to find the strength is through that intimacy with God. You've got to build that interior life, and with the sacraments as well, to so that you've got the strength to battle on.
Yep, that's for sure.
I just one other gospel passage that really blows me away is, I've got it up here because I never remember come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Right? For years and years, I was reading this and saying, is Jesus serious that, like being a Catholic is pretty hard? It seems as though the yoke that Jesus is offering us is not easy. But from my experience, how I mentioned when I'm keeping my prayer life up with the sacraments and all that, I can cruise through, right? And the reason I can cruise through is because Jesus takes on that. This is what I'm thinking, at least. He's taken on that burden for me, so that's the way I see it. Like Jesus really means what he says there. So, but we really do have to come to him, humbly, and
It's good advice.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story, man. Like, it's so authentic and inspiring. Man, it's just great to hear somebody's real life story and they're not, too nervous to talk about it. So we thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is sort of the kind of conversation that I think we were sort of searching for when we started this, a place that people that can be, like I said, authentic in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think that has kind of been missing out there, and hopefully more people will be inspired by your story. Maybe we'll share theirs, and we'll continue to share ours. And
because I think it's kind of a drudgery just going to confession week after week after week for years, and just to know that you're not alone in that battle.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've been itching to, in a sense, to share this stuff. I tell whoever, it's particularly young men, I tell them about this, the porn thing and the St. Joseph thing. I try to be very open and honest about it, because when I was their age, and I wasn't prepared to talk about it, and also no one else was prepared to talk to me about it. So, and the experience, that the grace that I received was so immense that I've got to share it. But there is. So when you asked me to come onto the show, well, I haven't had that many opportunities, to be honest. So I was really happy to do it.
I was glad you did. I think a lot of people are sort of scared off by that, understandably, but this is really, really important that like you said, people that are struggling, and the struggle is real and the struggle is common.
Yeah,
we're all in this together, and there is hope, and we appreciate you sharing your message today. So
no worries.
all right. Well, thank you, Kevin. It's been a pleasure. We'll let you get to bed here in a little bit, but well, thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good one.